those 1,600 troops have been deployed. They're basically on standby around the capital region. So they're not exactly in Washington, D.C. itself, but in the neighboring states in Virginia and Maryland. That's where they're based. And they're there to be able to intervene if Donald Trump actually takes that step. But really, the deployment of those 1,600 troops come just a day after Donald Trump threatened to call in the military if governors and mayors of cities across the U.S. Refuse to deploy enough law enforcement, enough National Guards to actually manage to keep the peace in their cities, in their states, and of course in Washington, D.C. That's where the White House is. That's where Donald Trump lives. And so he wants those troops very close by in case he needs them. But it's really part of that law and order rhetoric that he's had in the past couple of days. He wants to show that he is tough and that he will not allow these scenes of looting and violence that we saw, especially last night in Washington. That said, in order to deploy those military personnel in the city, he would have to invoke the Insurrection Act, something that hasn't been done by a U.S. president since 1992. Those were the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. But at the time, it was the governor who had requested from the president at the time to bring in those military troops. So far in the United States, in any 50 state or even in Washington, D.C., no governor and the D.C. mayor, neither of those have actually requested Donald Trump to deploy that military. So it remains to be seen what Donald Trump is going to do, whether he's just putting them out there to show that he's intervening and that he is trying to do his part in keeping the peace, or if he is actually intent on deploying those those soldiers on U.S. domestic soil, even though the military's job technically is to defend the United States against foreign attacks.